on to the next item on the agenda, which is the statement by the Vice President of the Commission, High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. The situation of migrants in Libya is the thing. And so, High Representative Mogherini, you have the floor.
As you see, for this debate, I am pleased to be joined by Commissioner Avramopoulos, as we were asked to cover both the external side of this situation and the internal work of the European Union. And obviously, as Commissioner Avramopoulos has the responsibility of our internal work on migration, he will complement my introduction and he will stay for the conclusions as well. We have all seen the images on CNN coming from the detention centres in Libya. Unfortunately, what the media reported is not new. We have discussed this in this hemicycle several times, and this is not the first time I tell you. Personally, I first heard the stories about the detention centres and the unthinkable violations of human rights a few years ago in Lampedusa. And I was surprised that the rest of the world was not strongly reacting to stories that were well known, not since a couple of weeks ago, since years. I heard them from people who had been tortured or had lost their loved one. I heard them from the NGOs, from doctors and humanitarian workers who had been in those centres. And if any of you has seen the movie Fuoco a Mare, that was, I believe, projected also in the European Parliament in Brussels, I've heard those stories because they are told and they're shown just in a movie. So nothing new, unfortunately. Nothing new, unfortunately. But
Mistään uudesta asiastahan tässä ei ole kyse, mutta kerron nyt siitä, mitä tapahtui sen jälkeen, kun oltiin pari vuotta sitten ensimmäistä kertaa nämä tarinat kuultu. No, myöhässä tällöinkin oltiin, koska EUn olisi pitänyt reagoida aikaisemmin, mutta 2-3 vuotta sitten lähdettiin liikkeelle ja silloin päätettiin toimia. Ja tilanne ei suinkaan ollut helppo. Juuri ennen kuin media alkoi raportoida Libyasta, EU ryhtyi toimiin. Olimme yhteydessä YK:hon ja erityisesti kansainväliseen pakolaisyhteisön ja katsottaisiin, miten menetellä rantautuneiden pakolaisten suhteen. Ja toiminnan tulisi olla lähellä näitä pidätyskeskuksia, ja tämän olen nostanut esiin täälläkin viimeksi 2 kuukautta sitten, ja juuri näin on tarkoitus tehdä, mutta ei näitä asioita yhdessä yössä hoideta. Nyt IOM:n ja UNHCR:n kanssa olemme vuoden ajan toimineet, jotta saisimme toimia juuri Libyan alueelle, ja on tärkeää, että näille ihmisille annetaan mahdollisuus elää turvallisesti omassa maassaan.
Because in the detention centers,
sillä pidätyskeskusten elämää ei voi elämäksi kutsua. Ja Euroopan unionin
have assisted over 15,000 migrants who were trapped in Libya just in this year of work, that now have been able not only to go home with assisted voluntary returns supported by us and practically and operationally done by the IOM, but to start a new life. I give you one example. I was told the story of a group of 10 young men from the Gambia who went home from Libya thanks to our support. And with our funds, they bought a small refrigerated truck and they're using it to deliver fish around the country. So this is just one little story, and it's one example out of thousands of good stories of voluntary and sustainable returns. And it's with stories like that that we show also to local communities that embarking in a dangerous journey is not only a risk, it's extremely dangerous. And you might end up in a worse place than the one you have left from. These are the kind of stories that I think we need to share and we need to tell. We believe this is the right way to do things. Humane, sustainable, with the right international standards, in cooperation with the UNHCR and the IOM. Today, new partners are finally joining our work. The summit between the European Union and the African Union 10 days ago in Abidjan has been a turning point. Let me say it has been a turning point not only on this, it has been a key political summit for EU-African Union partnership. But this is not the issue we're discussing tonight. That is the 10th debate we can have around 1 o'clock tomorrow morning. But our African partners on this issue have realised that it was time to engage seriously. I believe our African partners have had enough of seeing their brothers and sisters dying in detention centres or along the route in the desert. They want to stop it and to stop the criminal networks that are making money out of death and slavery. We've set up a joint task force with the African Union, the European Union and the United Nations precisely to address the situation of migrants inside Libya, and the results already in these first 10 days are quite impressive. Right after we did that, in just 9 days, we have assisted almost 2,000 migrants in going back home from Libya voluntarily, with the assistance of the IOM. And there is a new awareness and a new common determination to act. So thanks to this, we aim now at transferring a further 15,000 people who are currently in the detention centres, and this would allow us to empty the current population in detention centres in the next few months. This is feasible. We have already assisted 15,000, 2,000 of which in the last 9 days, and we are aiming at transferring another 15,000 in the next couple of months with the practical work of the IOM and the cooperation of the African Union on the ground. But this is not enough. For some people, going back home is not an option because of war or of persecution. So for those who have the right to international protection, we need to open new avenues to come to Europe or to other safe places. The European Commission has proposed to welcome 50,000 people in need of international protection. And we've just launched a new programme with the UNHCR called the Emergency Transit Mechanism, and the first transfers have already taken place so that those who have the right to receive asylum can come safely to Europe instead of risking their lives. Is this enough? Clearly it isn't. Clearly it isn't. And it's frustrating every single person we don't manage to reach, every single place we don't manage to go. And you know the situation on the ground in Libya, not easy for the IOM and the UNHCR or for the NGOs to go around even and simply, or to get access. Clearly it is not sufficient, it is not enough yet, and we need to continue working together, including with the Libyan authorities. We need to overcome once and for all the system of systematic detention. We must allow the complete and proper registration of migrants and prosecute the criminal groups who have smuggled and enslaved. I discussed this with President Sarraj this morning to prepare together the first meeting of this task force, European Union, African Union, United Nations, that I called for at political level for Thursday morning in Brussels. We will have this first operational meeting at the political level to accelerate our common work in Libya, but also beyond Libya, because the situation also further down south along the route is not at all a rosy one. We, first of all, the European Union, are working to put an end to death and exploitation, to reduce the risky journeys, to save lives at sea and in the desert, and to provide international protection to those who need it. We are also working hand in hand with the United Nations to make progress in the political process in Libya. Let me conclude with one word on this before I give the floor to Commissioner Avramopoulos to complete my remarks. The political process in Libya, this is the first and foremost for the benefit of the Libyans. And we tend sometimes with the European lenses to forget that Libya is not just a place where migrants are passing through or are detained. Libya is a country that has gone through very difficult times, is still in a very difficult situation, and the Libyans themselves need to see our political support to overcome the current situation. But, obviously, improved governance will also help address the migration challenge inside Libya. So the European Union is actively supporting the UN Action Plan at every stage. I met with President Sarraj 10 days ago in Abidjan and with the Special Representative Salameh in Rome 10 days ago. While there is not much progress to report yet, there is some movement in the right direction. But it is fragile and we need to stay resolute, particularly to support the Libya political agreement through and beyond the deadline of 17 December. So this job is clear, will not be done in a day. There will be bumps on the road and we will need long-term engagement, but we are on the right path. We are on the only possible path to manage migration in a more humane and sustainable way. And finally, we are not alone. We'll continue to work with all our determination together with the African Union and the UN, in particular the IOM and UNHCR. Thank you.
Kiitos korkealle edustajalle.
Thank you to the High Representative, and we will now give the floor to Commissioner Avramopoulos. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, thank you very much for the invitation to discuss this very, very sensitive issue tonight here. I'm more than happy to be here and compliment the words said some minutes ago by my good colleague, Mrs. Federica Mogherini. This is the situation, as she described it. But I think on the ground it's even worse. And the images we saw on CNN recently do not reflect the reality. So we are conscious of what's happening there. But let me start by making this crystal clear. It is not the European Union's action that has created an inhumane system in Libya. For far too long, these unacceptable, appalling conditions have existed there. So, quite on the opposite, it is the European Union that, together with its international partners, is coordinating the efforts to address and improve the situation on the ground. Our collective efforts cannot ensure from one day to another a result which equals our expectations. But with our joint and international cooperation, we hope to achieve results in the short to medium term. We are working in a very difficult context, as you are all aware of. An inclusive political transition, along with the stabilisation and economic consolidation of Libya, remains a key prerequisite for addressing migration-related challenges in Libya in a sustainable way. Within this complex framework, we are managing to work in Libya on all possible fronts. Cooperating with third countries, especially in North Africa, is a cornerstone of the comprehensive migration policy that we proposed to step up in our contribution to the leaders' meeting this Thursday evening on the way forward migration. Jointly with IOM and UNHCR and other humanitarian organisations, we are focusing, firstly, to improve the conditions of the migrants stranded in the country. Secondly, to support their voluntary return and reintegration back home. And thirdly, to create legal pathways to Europe for people in need for international protection. I'm not going to repeat what Mrs. Mogherini already said about the registration and the humanitarian assistance on the ground, as well as for the voluntary return and reintegration of migrants to their own countries. I will focus on the legal pathways, which should become the preferred way for people in need of protection to reach safely in Europe. In mid-November, the first group of 25 of the most vulnerable persons needing protection were evacuated from Libya to Niger for their further resettlement to France, thanks to the support of the UNHCR, to the EU funding and the consent of the governments of both Libya and Niger. With the EU support, more evacuations from Libya to Niger will be carried out by UNHCR in the next weeks to come. As announced in our roadmap presented last week, our target is to reach 1,000 by the end of February. The continuous evacuation of people trapped in Libya depends on several factors. It is, of course, linked to the capacity of our member states, together with other destination countries, to rapidly resettle from Niger the asylum seekers evacuated. As you know, in September, the Commission called on the member states to make available at least 50,000 resettlement places in the next 2 years for asylum seekers located in some priority countries. This, of course, includes the countries of the central Mediterranean route. Member States replied in a very encouraging manner, offering until now almost 40,000 new resettlement pledges, and we are confident that additional pledges from Member States who have not yet replied to our call will be offered. But meanwhile, has already arrived the moment to start fulfilling these pledges, and I count on the support of the European Parliament in reminding the urgency. I also count on your support for the target we proposed to the leaders that 25,000 resettlements take place before October 2018. In parallel, we continue to help the Sahel countries to better manage their borders and reinforce their capacities in relation to the fight against migrant smuggling and trafficking of human beings. I understand that there are still concerns for the efficiency of our collective action on the ground. As the Amnesty International today reported, instead, I would call for more and stronger joint cooperation of all actors and partners, since we all aim the same objectives: stability in the region, unity in Libya, solidarity and practical support of the people in need. I'm looking forward to exchanging views with you tonight. Thank you for your attention.
Kiitos komissaari.